contract was bound in Italian leather, cold and heavy, much like the man who slid it across the mahogany table. His name was Elias Thorne, and the world knew him as a CEO of terrifying precision, a ruthless, unfeeling machine who measured human worth and profit margins. He didn't look at me, Genevieve, when he spoke. He looked at the document, his voice a low, gravelly monotone. 5 years, he stated. A marriage of convenience. I require a polished, discreet consort for social and corporate functions. You require a solution to your family's overwhelming debt. I provide the funds, you provide the performance. There will be no emotional involvement, no children, and strictly separate quarters. I hated every single word. I hated the desperate situation that forced me to agree, the corner I'd been backed into. My father's sudden illness had ripped the curtain back on a devastating financial hole, a black abyss that threatened to swallow my family whole. And Elias Thorne, with his icy demeanor and endless resources, was the only one who could plug it. So I signed. I felt the pen scrape against the paper like fingernails on glass, the sound of me selling my life, my freedom, for the next 5 years. For 2 years, our arrangement was a study in glacial distance. Elias was meticulously polite in public, his hand a formal, heavy weight on the small of my back as we navigated galas and board meetings. He was the perfect, respectable husband, but in private, he was a ghost. He spent his time locked away behind the reinforced steel door of his office or traveling to distant, obscure locations for what he called his security audits. I lived alone in the vast, echoing penthouse, a gilded cage where my only company was the oppressive silence and the constant, unnerving presence of his personal security detail. They followed my every movement with an unnerving focus that felt less like protection and more like surveillance. I grew to hate him. I hated him for his coldness, his immense power, and the casual cruelty of his distance. My only escape was my work as a museum curator, a world of history and quiet beauty. And my only solace was found in my friendship with Leo, a warm, thoughtful architect who shared my passion for history. Leo understood, without me having to say it, the prison I was in. He offered kindness and intellectual connection, the complete antithesis of Elias's mechanical existence. I knew it was dangerous, but I leaned into the comfort he provided, a small flame of warmth in my frozen life, counting the days until my 5-year contract was up. The first crack in Elias's impenetrable armor came during a tedious benefit dinner. A photographer's flashbulb popped too brightly, plunging the ballroom into a moment of disorienting darkness. In that half-second of chaos, a man near our table lurched forward. Before I could even register the movement, before I could even flinch, Elias's polished composure shattered. He moved with a speed and ferocity that was shocking, throwing me roughly behind him and engaging the man in a silent, brutal struggle that was over before the lights even flickered back on. Elias simply straightened his suit, the attacker already subdued and being dragged away by his guards. He smoothly escorted me back to our table as if he had merely spilled a glass of water. "A drunken idiot," he muttered, his jaw tight. But his eyes, usually so flat and cold, were the only thing that revealed the wild adrenaline coursing through him. Do not speak of it, but the encounter brought back a buried memory, something I hadn't thought about in a decade. A memory from 10 years ago when I was attacked late one night leaving the university library. I remembered the heart-stopping fear, the sudden darkness as a hand covered my mouth, and then the overwhelming strength of a stranger who appeared out of nowhere, a silent whirlwind of controlled violence. I remembered the faint, silvery scar near the stranger's left wrist that glinted in the dim street light. Later that night, as Elias finally emerged from his office, I cornered him. He looked tired and distracted, ready to retreat into his own world again. But I wouldn't let him. I reached out and gently pushed back the cuff of his expensive dress shirt. There, faintly visible beneath the crisp white cotton, was a thin, silvery scar, identical to the one seared into my memory. My breath hitched. "It was you," I whispered, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. 10 years ago, outside the library. "You saved my life." Elias snatched his arm back as if he'd been burned. His storm-cloud eyes, which I had always mistaken for coldness, were now blazing with a mix of fury and raw, undiluted panic. "Don't be ridiculous, Genevieve. I've never been near that neighborhood." "You are mistaken." He dismissed me with an icy finality that was more desperate than cruel and retreated to his office, the heavy, reinforced door locking behind him. But I wasn't mistaken. I knew what I had seen. The discovery shattered my perception of him. The ruthless CEO wasn't just a corporate machine. He was a man of immense hidden strength and a fierce, protective instinct. His coldness wasn't indifference. It was a carefully constructed mask, and I had to know the truth. I had to know why. Driven by a need I couldn't explain, I searched his office. I found the hidden key to his private safe, a set of coordinates disguised as a date on an antique map I'd once admired. My hand shook as I opened it. Inside, nestled amongst legal documents, was a heavy, unmarked dossier. This was not a marriage contract. This was a file from an international security agency. The file detailed an ongoing critical threat against my life. A threat from a shadowy, powerful organization my father had unknowingly crossed years ago. The danger wasn't just a decade-old memory, it was active. It was now. The files explained everything. The stranger who saved me 10 years ago was indeed Elias, then an operative working on a parallel security mission. He recognized the threat against me even then. When my father's debt crisis emerged, Elias didn't see it as a business deal. He saw it as an acquisition for security purposes. He saw it as his only way to get close enough to protect me. The 5-year contract wasn't a constraint. It was the minimum time he calculated he would need to actively dismantle the threat while keeping me within his protection bubble. His extreme security measures weren't paranoia. They were a necessity. His frequent security audits were counter-surveillance missions. Even his security detail wasn't watching me. They were watching the perimeter for threats against me. He wasn't my warden. He was my guardian angel. And then, tucked at the bottom, I found a final heartbreaking document. A detailed psychological profile on me. It wasn't written for security purposes. It was written with a painful, startling intimacy. It noted my love for old books, my favorite brand of tea, my deep-seated desire for intellectual connection, and the crushing loneliness I suffered in his gilded cage. A single sentence was underlined in red. Subject requires external validation. Emotional connection necessary for stability. And below that, in Elias's own sharp handwriting, was a note: locate a suitable emotional anchor within the subject's professional circle. Monitor interaction. Do not interfere. The air left my lungs. Leo. He hadn't just known about Leo. He had deliberately stepped back. He had monitored my loneliness, my desperation for connection, and calculated that I needed an emotional outlet to survive the isolation he was forced to impose. He accepted my affair, endured my quiet betrayal, and allowed me to find comfort with another man, all because he knew his own constant. Watchful presence would only draw danger closer to me. He had sacrificed his marriage, his reputation with me, and his own heart to be my silent bodyguard. He had endured the crushing weight of my hatred to ensure not just my survival, but my emotional happiness. He was the one who had saved me twice. The man I had condemned as ruthless and unfeeling was the only man who was truly, completely, and selflessly protecting me. My hatred instantly flipped, dissolving into an overwhelming wave of guilt and an agonizing pity for the man who was sacrificing his own life for mine. I locked the safe, the documents burning in my mind. When Elias finally emerged from his office, hours later, I didn't confront him with the file. Words were useless now. I simply walked over to him, my eyes filled with tears of recognition, and gently, reverently traced the faint silvery scar on his wrist. The vows may have been fake, I whispered, my voice thick with emotion, finally understanding the true, immense cost of his love. But the danger was real. And so is this. I pressed my hand flat against his chest, over his heart, feeling its strong, steady beat. I was choosing the hidden danger and the silent protector over the simple comfort of Leo. I was done running. I would fight the ghosts he was shielding me from, not as his client, not as his contractual obligation, but as his wife. For real, this time, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more.